Hello, everybody. We're going to kick off the closing session of our fantastic weekend-long conference. I'll start by introducing our first speaker, Danielle uh,
Cadena
Cadena
Deulen.
Deulen. Sorry, I'm just trying to find your introduction here. Okay, so she is an assistant professor for the Graduate Creative Writing Program at Georgia State University in Atlanta. She is the author of a memoir and 3 poetry collections, the most recent of which, um, Desire Museum, won the 2024 Lambda Literary Award in Outstanding Bisexual Poetry. She is also the co-host and creator of litfromthebasement.com, a literary podcast, and you can find out more about her on her website at danielledeulen.net, which we'll post in the chat. And so feel free to kick us off, Danielle, with your poetry as part of our closing session.
Great. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really thrilled to be here. The little girl me, I think, probably couldn't imagine reading at an international conference on bisexuality, um, since I am from an age in which people didn't talk about that much. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm going to be reading a few poems from Desire Museum that speak specifically to the conference themes. And the first one I'm going to read is called Postscript. And this is actually comes at the end of a section of Sapphic love poems. And I think that it speaks to the sort of difficulty of finding words for the experience of a new kind of love to the speaker, a queer love that is not sort of part of the larger conversation that this person is thinking of in their culture. So this is called Postscript. You had a headache. I drew the dark curtains and you closed your eyes. This is verifiable. The dark was like a closed mouth or the interior petals of a white peony. My heart beat arrhythmically, but only for a moment. This is true. Outside, it was day, a rainy day in the northwest, so somewhat dim, but bright enough to light the falling rain. I'm trying to be specific. Your hair smelled of eucalyptus oil and lavender. I placed my palm on your warm cheek. This, I swear. Your headache arrived after too much wine and laughter. I can't remember what made us laugh. True is the name for whatever corresponds to our idea of truth. In the atriums of my chest, there is a palimpsest. I couldn't decipher the old script, but knew something in me was worn away. I was frightened. You swooned in the dark room, and I touched your closed eyelids softly to feel the roll of the dream beneath them. You hummed in your sleep. Your humming cleaned that sound from my memory, rewrote itself anew. What I knew as true no longer corresponds. You've erased everything written before you. Another poem from this series. I'll read a couple of the lost sapphics, I believe. The first in the series, so they're not actually in sapphics, which is dactylic hexameter. I don't write in that kind of formality. I have a kind of mesh up form here for those of you who are interested in poetics, that these are all in quatrains and it's all in syllabics. So the syllables are 11, 11, 11, 5, if you wanted to listen for that. This one's called Lost Sapphics. It's the first one I wrote in the series. Everything closed inside a bud. A tender vine curls around rails. I unbutton the smoke texture of your blouse, cool your skin with my tongue. See how unselfish I am, how I disappear into a breeze to please you. All season, a stand of silver lindens have watched us without interest while our suitor soaked your bed. I go home to my hallways, your scent strong on my hands. Think of your eyes, the waters between lost aisles. Those leaves like heavy green copper bells, latent with ringing. When I run along the edge of the steep bluff, trying to make your touch ebb from my body, the ocean becomes a thin gleam inside me, an aortic thrum, a wind's complaint, starlings spreading rumors through the slender grass, a susurration so soft I hardly hear it. Cumulus clouds tremble toward the waning light. Your mouth wets mine. The earth is saturated with secrets. An iris rises near your door. I envy its hue, its vim, how it grows two ways without splitting. Mm. A lot of the book, thank you. I see a little hand clap. Thank you so much. A lot of the book is sort of about coming to various realizations at midlife and looking back at one's romances, one's decisions, one's political affiliates. So there are a lot of poems in here that are actually quite purposefully political and some that are more intimate. Some of it discusses interpersonal violence. And I'm thinking about the ways in which we can just be sort of more thoughtful or open about the ways and kinds and degrees of love that we have toward others. And I thought a lot about the ways in which very, very intense and close friendships have a kind of romance to them, um, and uh, and and the kind of protectedness we feel over those friends in their own chosen romances. So this one's called Another Romance. He had a gun, you told me, years later, leaning toward the windshield as I drove your black truck through the Columbia Gorge. He got it out once when we were on the roof and just shot toward the city, toward nothing. The sun was going out in your face like a daffodil, and the road curved wildly between a cliff and river. Dusk made everything a little gold. It's like he couldn't help it. He just aimed toward the street and fired. I started screaming, which made him laugh. We'd just come from a mountain wedding where neither of us were brides, and the air was too cold for the dresses we wore. I put the heat on full blast and made a move to take off my coat, so you grabbed the wheel. The fabric of your blue dress both clung to and fell from your slender torso like water. How did you not know he was crazy? I asked. You glanced at me, your eyes full of champagne, said, I knew it a little, and gave the wheel back. Daffodil is the wrong flower to describe you, but because we met when we were children, I always see your child face beneath your face, your child body beneath your body. You rolled down the window, asked me to drive carefully so you could lean way out. I said, I thought you were cold. You said, yes, but I don't mind. I thought of how he once woke you by slapping your face. You leaned your wind chime body from the window, your long hair whipping the side of the truck. I knew if you uncurled your fists into palms, your red nails would surely kiss the road. And because I don't want to take us over time, I'll just read one more poem. Thank you again for inviting me. This one is actually in the form of a villanelle, which is not a form I usually write. It's a very difficult form to write in English because we don't have a lot of rhymes. And so I've done the best I could. It's called Invoice. We were too young to imagine regret, believing our lives a series of scenes written by us, with no ending, no debt to repay for the way we lived, the sweat never cooling, the sky a constant between. We were too young to believe in regret, though we lived in the dust-worn sublets of a city that coughed and staggered unclean toward the train, oblivious to how the debt of time can annul a dream. While the violet winter light touched the tangled sheen we made together, too pale and lean to regret the silence we idealize, the faint alphabet of our breathing, unable to replace, it seems, the words we didn't say or write. There's a debt in the light that surrounds your silhouette, an unfolding of what I could not have foreseen. Why didn't I stay? I was young. I didn't know regret grew with time, with memory, that indelible debt. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Danielle. That was beautiful and a really, really great way to start off our closing session. So thank you for sharing your poetry with us. So now I'm going to introduce our last speaker of the day, our closer for this conference, who I believe for most folks here does not need an introduction, but for the sake of it, I will give one anyway. So now we'll be hearing from Robyn Ochs, who is an educator, speaker, grassroots activist, and an editor of By Women Quarterly and 2 anthologies, the 42 country collection Getting By, Voices of Bisexuals Around the World, and Recognize the Voices of Bisexual Men. Robyn's writings have been published in many bi, women's studies, multicultural, and LGBTQ plus anthologies, and she has taught courses on LGBTQ plus history and politics in the United States and Canada, the politics of sexual orientation, and the experiences of those who transgress the binary categories of gay, straight, masculine, feminine, black, white, and or male, female. Among other things, she also crafted the definition of bisexuality that is used by many bi plus activists around the world, which is the following. I call myself bisexual because I acknowledge in myself the potential to be attracted romantically and or sexually to people of more than one gender, not necessarily at the same time, in the same way, or to the same degree. Robyn is deeply committed to intersexual and sustainable activism, to working with others, to building coalitions across identities and across movements, to supporting emerging leaders, and to learning and growing. Join me in welcoming Robyn Ochs for being here as one of our icons in the Bi Plus community. And thank you so much for helping us wrap up this fantastic 2-day conference. We're all very, very proud to have you here, and I will pass things over to you now, Robyn. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabrielle, and I'm very excited to be here. This has been a wonderful weekend. I've made it to almost all of the sessions, and it's been really interesting, and I've learned a lot. So thank you. So again, my name is Robyn Ochs. I go by she and they pronouns, and last month, September, marked my 49th anniversary of identifying as bisexual. I traveled the world speaking about bi plus topics, and that's something I always remember to say, because one of the biggest stereotypes about bisexuality, of course, is that it's just a phase. And so I like to introduce myself as Exhibit A, or perhaps Exhibit B, to demonstrate that for some of us, it's an identity that is enduring and, a deeply serious identity. I know that's how I experience my identity. So I've been a bi activist now for more than 4 decades. So for a very, very, very long time. And it's been an interesting progression. There was a time when I'd read every single thing that had ever been written in the English language on the subject of bisexuality. Until the 1990s, I could fit everything that was written, that had been written, on one shelf of my bookcase and still have space left over for some framed photos and some other knickknacks. Like, there was not a whole lot stuff available. And today, there is so much being written and so much research being conducted that I am unable to keep up. And the pool of scholars on this subject is becoming larger and also increasingly diverse on many axes. And this is yielding new and interesting areas of research and deepening our understanding of areas previously not researched. So I think we're in a very exciting time in terms of the thoughts and the production that we're generating. Outside of the academy, but related, Bi+ people have had some pretty amazing global successes of late. One thing that strikes me is that Bi+ Netherlands, about 2 years ago, became the first bi organization in the world ever to have multi-year funding from a government. They actually have paid staff who work full-time, and it's just an amazing thing because our movement really is short on that kind of experience. Also, the European bisexual network called Bi+ Equal is currently in formation, including with, I know there are some of you are here at this conference, and that organization has the support of both support, non-material support, but also financial support from the European Commission. And again, this is a first. And my own love child, Bi Women Quarterly, is about to begin its 43rd year of continuous publication. I've been editing this free and now global publication for about 15 years. And also, along with Barbara Oud from the Netherlands, of Bi+ Netherlands, we've now hosted at least 15 Bi+ world meetups on Zoom. And the next one, if you're wondering, is November 22nd. And yes, you are invited. So there's a lot of stuff happening. And this conference itself is another of our resources, another one of our successes. And I want to make a shout out right now to the organizers of this conference, and also to the folks who brought us Bi+ research conferences in the past, because they've been happening for a while, occasionally here and there, but they've been happening for a long time. In 2026, around World Pride in Amsterdam, there hopefully will be another in-person Bi+ research conference. And I have found these experiences just absolutely educational, enlightening, exciting. It's so wonderful to be together with other people who think about these topics, who care about these topics, for whom these topics are like deeply, deeply interesting. And so, yeah, you're my people. And now back to research. One of the most exciting things about Bi+ research is that there are so many topics that haven't yet been researched, and very few, if any, that have received enough attention so far. So that gives us here the opportunity to be on the cutting edge of what's happening. There is so much space to say new and exciting things. We are right here in a very exciting position. And I think that we need, as Mel Reeve reminded us, to understand that we can create successful and affirming Bi+ spaces. One of the things I really want to see researched is how do we create impactful spaces for our Bi+ youth, for our Bi+ adults, for our Bi+ elders, thinking about the positive frame. How do we create things that will really be helpful and useful to us? What is useful? What does useful look like? And I also want to thank Marissa Tangeman for reminding us that disclosure and non-disclosure of our Bi+ identities is not a binary, but rather, is complex. because you could be out in some parts of your life or at some times of your life and not in others. It's a very complex frame. And I'd like to see, personally, I'd like to see more research about disclosure or non-disclosure affects our mental health. I believe that disclosure is good for our mental health. I'd like to see that documented. I'd like to see more information about that so that we can know that instead of just think that. Earlier this year, another topic that I'm interested in personally is that earlier this year, I began a qualitative research study on the experiences of BI+ elders here in the United States. It happened because I was invited to keynote a conference, and that was the topic that I was asked to talk about. And so I thought, there's not very much out there. I looked and there was very little written on the topic. And so I ended up interviewing 13 elders to get some new and unique, interesting things to speak about. And I was honestly appalled by how little research I found on this topic. And so I want to encourage those people here at this conference to think about maybe, making this one of your areas of inquiry. Hopefully, it's also my hope that we can do a panel on this topic in next year's conference. Some other things I'd like to see. More funding to conduct BI+ research. I know I'm not the only one who wants that. We really need funding, and I know it's very hard to get funding because we only get funding when people take these topics seriously, and we're struggling to make that happen. I'd like to see more documentation also of our BI+ history. If we don't write it, it probably will not be written. I was very excited to see a panel on our history as well, and that be talked about during this conference. I'd also like to see, again, more disaggregation of the data. In larger LGBTQ IA+ studies, we need more information to understand how BI+ people are doing, and also in what specific ways do our experiences differ from or are similar to those of lesbian and gay men. Like we need that information. So we need the larger studies disaggregated. Also, another priority that I have personally is thinking about how do we make our research accessible to non-researchers, to non-academics, because I believe that research can serve multiple purposes. It can be a tool of academic inquiry, research for research's sake, knowledge for the sake of knowledge. That's a good thing. I also think that research, of course, can be a tool for academic and professional advancement for those people who are doing the research, because you need to publish in order to move forward in academia. But I also think that research can make a powerful case in the allocation of resources. It can make a powerful case in the allocation of resources. For example, documenting health and behavioral disparities faced by BI+ people can be used to make a strong case for creating and funding programs to support us. If we don't have that data, it's really hard to make a case. And then I also believe, this is where I wanted to get to, is that research can help individuals understand, validate, and empower themselves. Research itself can be a tool for validation. For example, so what I'd like to see is research findings, because there's some amazing stuff happening here, including stuff that I just learned about this weekend. I would like to see that information translated from the language of the academy, from the language of academia, into the language of everyday people, so that it can be more universally accessible. And I've been trying to do this in my own work. So as editor of Bi Women Quarterly, one of the things that I created was a research corner. I try to have something in every single issue, 1 to 2 short articles that do just that, short articles summarizing research findings in a way that is clear and accessible to our readers, who are mostly not academics. And by the way, since I have your attention, I do want to say that we welcome new contributors to our column. if you have something you'd like to share, please reach out to me after. I did post something in the chat with my email. So I really do want new people, especially people outside the US, but also people in the US. But I really want to show people what's happening in research globally. And then on another subject, I was also really happy yesterday to hear self-care for researchers be mentioned as a subject of importance, because we are at a time of tremendous uncertainty and stress in this world. And our forward progress has been met with a great deal of backlash and anti-LGBTQIA+ rhetoric, and also proposed and sometimes enacted legislation that does us harm. Trans people especially are absorbing the worst of this. But I'm old enough to know from experience that the pendulum of progress swings back and forth. Change is met with backlash, which is met with more change, which is met with more backlash. It's a long-standing, ongoing pattern. I hope that what's happening right now is just another swing in the pendulum, albeit an enormous one, and that we will be able to restore forward movement. But we have our work cut out for us. And right now, it's important that we remember and acknowledge that things are very difficult for many of us. So please, please take care of yourselves. Step up when you can, step back when you need to. Rest, dance, sleep, eat good food, do all kinds of things to take care of you. Think about your long-term sustainability. Imagine yourself as a vehicle. In order for that vehicle to work for a really long period of time, it needs maintenance. It needs nourishment. It needs maintenance. It needs support. So take good care of yourself. Really think of yourself as at the long term, someone who needs to sustain themselves for the long term, and remember to stop and smell the flowers. Remember to rest. Remember to care for yourself. And then finally, I want to say just in closing that I am so grateful to the organizers of this event for creating this global space. We can learn so much from speaking with one another, and it's remarkable to me how much we have in common, and also how much our experiences differ, both across and also within national borders. So let's keep shining light on BI+ subjects, and let's support each other's work, and let's keep on moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robyn.
Thank you so much, Robyn. It was an honor having you here, wrapping up the weekend with us. Thank you for being Exhibit B for all of us, for editing iconic work, for encouraging new topics for research, for giving us hope and a lot of joy for our constantly growing community, and for all your insightful remarks. And I believe we can all agree on more funding and on more self-care for us all. And a special thanks from the leadership team for your kind words, but also for writing our meeting agendas for the entire next year. Thank you for suggesting all these great topics. We'll try to include them in our next activities. Thanks to everyone joining us online for another amazing day and weekend of BI+ stories, experiences, and community building. We would like to thank all the speakers for their tremendous work and all the audience that has followed us the entirety of these 2 days. Thank you for engaging with each other and with us, for all the resources that you have generously shared in the chat, for trusting us with your personal stories, and for the good vibes that we have consistently experienced today and yesterday. We are proud of what we had achieved this weekend. I look forward to seeing you all again next year for the next event of the Bisexual Research Group. Feel free to get in touch with us through our social media channels, share our posts, suggest events, or content, and overall just be awesome the rest of the year. Our activities and discussions around different BIPLUS topics will resume soon. Some fascinating topics are already circulating amongst us after hearing some very amazing panel during the weekend. If you'd like to discuss your work in an informal workshop, or if you have a topic you'd like to talk about with like-minded people, please get in touch. We'd be happy to arrange something for you. As a reminder, we have recorded all the sessions, but for Mel Reeves' keynote, and after we have some rest after today, we'll upload them on our YouTube channel. So please share them when they are ready.
We just want to thank everyone again who contributed to this event, of course, to all of the speakers and to all of the attendees. Without you, we could not run this event. We would also like to send a special thanks to those who made a donation when registering for the event. We are a non-profit and organisation and a small group of volunteers who take a grassroots approach to running all of our events. We host these conferences and run all of the Bisexual Research Group events without formal funding, and so we appreciate all of your support and contributions and engagement with our events. We invite you to continue contributing to our future events so that we can continue to keep running these amazing conferences and community building events together. Taralyn, Derek, Lucia, Aurelio, Gabrielle, and I feel proud to be with you here today and to have spent the weekend discussing bisexualities with you. And we encourage you, wherever possible, to be visible, be proud, be a bisexual killjoy, and thank you again. We will see you next year.